strategic development of Bashkortostan. I'm the head of the project on development of Agidel port, and our roundtable is dedicated to the topic of creation of the multimodal hub in transportation corridor north-south. And let me introduce the participants of our today's roundtable. Today, at our roundtable, I will sit, if you let me sit. We have Deputy Minister of Land and Property Resources of Bashkortostan, Rustam Gizatulin. Online, we will have and we will listen to the International Transport Corridor North-South, the Director of the Directorate of International Transport Corridor, Alexander Isayev. With us, we have the Minister of Transport and Road Service of Bashkortostan, Alexander Klebanov. Also, Deputy Minister of Agriculture of Bashkortostan, Yuri Lysov. The first Vice President of the Foundation of Strategic Development, Gleb Pokotovich. Executive Director of the Directorate on Transport Infrastructure of the Eurasian Development Bank, Sergei Paseka. Director of Bashatom Terminal LLC, Oleg Pan. Deputy Minister for Transport and Road Services, Ruslan Garipov. Head of the Department of the Rail Air Traffic of the Ministry of Transport, Oleg Gileev. The head of Agidel Administration, Yanis Kilfanov. Deputy Director of Bashatom Terminal, Kurbatov Valery. The head of Representative Office of the Russian Export Center in Ufa, Rinat Miniapov. Leading expert, Director of Repair and Maintenance Vessel Plant, Rinat Tagdilovich. Business Sheriff of Agidel, Eduard Yusupov. And Kuybyshev Railroad is presented by Ekaterina Kutusheva. Please introduce yourself, because Inna Rykova, the head of the Center of Economy of the Ministry of Finance of Russian Federation. So the topic of our today's roundtable is the discussion of opportunities of the Republic in terms of establishment of the multimodal hub in transportation corridor north-south. We'll try to test online as well, because right now we are going to have a presentation by Mr. Isayev. Alexander, good afternoon. We can see you very well. But we cannot hear you. There is no sound. The sound is very, very low. No sound. We cannot hear you yet. Yes, now we can hear. Good afternoon, distinguished participants of the meeting. I apologize for being unable to join you, but my working agenda changed the situation. So I would like to welcome you on behalf of the Autonomous Nonprofit Organization, Directorate of the International Transport Corridors, which is the leading expert organization in international transportation corridors. The information about our activities is provided on the first slide. I will just briefly tell you about a few things, and just 1-2 seconds with this slide for you to read this slide. Next slide, please. What I would like to tell you about the transportation industry during sanctions is one of the key branches of industry that was affected by logistics challenges, problems of export and availability of import goods. And the detailed information about sanctions and our response actions is also presented at slide number 2. What has been done by us? We have established the working group dedicated on logistics in a crisis center of the government, and we have done certain work on reorientation of the cargo flows from February. We have also processed applications from citizens, and we have created 28 route passports. And one we would like to describe today, this is the route north-south, and within this transportation corridor, the Republic of Bashkortostan is located in the nearest vicinity. So at slide 3, you can see the dynamics, the change of the external freight flows in 2021-2022. And here we would like to mention that together with the government and the Ministry of Transportation of the Russian Federation and the Ministry of Economic Development, we have analyzed where and how we increased the amount of the cargo being transported. Also, we would like to mention that it is important to understand that in our company and in our organization, the main target of our organization is to provide actions of the long-term and medium-term perspective to ensure the transit of cargoes, and hence we are not even going to speak about transit, and stable functioning of the transportation system of our country, and to ensure its transport potential. And also, based on our review, you can see what we have obtained at our slide 4. Right now we are working on decisions of our crisis center on logistics corridors. And so our crisis center decided to eliminate the structural limitations that were imposed by the unfriendly countries, and now we're considering 3 transport corridors, north-south, then Azov Black Sea, and the third one is the eastern direction. So for these purposes, we have identified and determined 3 roadmaps with consideration of the forecast of the Ministry of Economic Development by 2030 in terms of development of transport infrastructure in these directions. Primarily, we have determined that all of the proposals for the roadmap shall be based on the reliable forecasts in terms of external trade flows, and we have also predicted some actions based on the forecasts from Ministry of Trade, Ministry of Agriculture, and we see the perspectives in the eastern and southern direction of the north-south corridor, and the infrastructure is divided into certain parts, rail parts, car transportation, and also crossings, and also approaching to seaports. We reviewed every particular site from the point of view of ratio between the through capacity of the crossings, and also we consider the volume of the vehicles available. So far, we have considered the sources of funding and the volume of cargo to be transported, so that the roadmaps were synchronized with existing documentation of prospective planning and the government program of the Russian Federation on development of the transportation system and comprehensive plan for expansion of the transport infrastructure, and the plan for road activities for until 2027. We have also considered certain areas and measures that were outlined in the roadmap. in the scope of the national project on the high-quality roads, and also those roadmaps by railroads and also sea programs. So as an example, I would like to describe you the transport corridor north-south as far as it provides not just services for the cargoes to be transported to adjacent countries from the south of the country, but also to the seaport to the Persian Gulf. Here you see the redistribution of the flows from 2022 through 2030. And based on our opinion, here you see how the vessel base and the fleet shall grow in the direction north-south. Also, the work was carried out on development of the primary transport and economic balance in Transport Corridor North-South that was first announced in 2021, and we have evaluated the advantages of this corridor. In development of the transportation and economic balance of the International Transport Corridor North-South, we have reviewed the statistics in terms of the turnover of the target countries such as Kazakhstan, India, Pakistan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Iraq, Iran, Azerbaijan, Armenia, Georgia, and Turkey. And also we have taken into consideration such countries as the countries of European Union, as Belarus and Ukraine. We have evaluated also the existing infrastructure, the checkpoints through the border crossings, and also the network of the roads and railroads, sea infrastructure, ocean infrastructure, and the availability of ports in the Russian Federation. Speaking from fair practice, not everything is so ideal in this region because there are some issues that are identified as the systemic ones with the history and as the challenges for the stakeholders of the transportation process. Due to changing political and economical situation, the transporters take into consideration the constraining factor in the transportation corridor north-south between Russia and Persian Gulf countries, have not adjusted the platform interaction between the stakeholders and the countries participating in this transport corridor north-south, and we see no reverse loading of the vehicles. Also, we need to undertake the inventory of the container fleet in Russia, and we also need to organize the production of containers and certification of containers at international transport routes. Also, another obstacles we see is the lack in our transport corridor north-south, the lack of confidentiality of support of the deals and insurance. So we need to enhance our own fleet for operation at Caspian Sea to build ferries and other dedicated vessels of the corresponding capacity. Also, the low transit of cargoes at Caspian Sea is observed, as well as at other ports. We need to build other sea terminals for container handling and also for transportation of grain, oil, and other industrial products and food products. As for the variety of products that is being used for transportation by Caspian Sea, so there are some issues related to deepening of the bottom at the Volga River. And as for the transportation by cars, by trucks, we can utilize this corridor. We need to join to international convention, and we need to simplify the procedures for passage of the cargo by digitizing the services, by creating the electronic line at the crossing points, and also by electronic document circulation. And due to the lack of electronic services, we understand that it's not sufficiently used both in Russia and Iran, those countries that joined the Convention on Transportation of Cargoes, and that utilize the electronic document circulation. As far as in Iran, they have problems with recognition of the electronic signatures. We also need to have the electronic navigation forms for customs procedures during the entire length of the corridor. And in railway transportation, we see that the services are of low quality. We do not see the schedule, we do not understand the speed, and we do not have any synchronization of initiative in comprehensive logistics services. In order to be able to connect to Iranian railway via Azerbaijan, we need to adjust 165 kilometers of the rail track. And so in order to be able to solve these challenges, we've created the roadmap for north-south transportation corridor, and this roadmap has been signed today, as far as I have learned. It was signed by Mikhail Mishustin, the head of the Prime Minister of the Russian Federation. This transportation corridor north-south is very important from the point of view of transport availability for the central region of our country, including Bashkortostan. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. We'll be waiting for you in Ufa. Yeah, we're planning to come to you next week together with Mr. Manturov. There will be a meeting of 89 regions. And I guess we'll see each other back then. Thank you. If you have any questions, I can answer them. If we continue, let us continue. Yes, according to the timeline, we should continue. Okay, we give floor to the Ministry of Transport and Road Organization, Mr. Khlebanov. Good day, dear colleagues and participants of the round table. In short, about the situation on the water lines and infrastructure in the territory of Bashkortostan. The international transport corridor north-south can be the source of development of EU and Eurasian Union and implementation of infrastructural and transport projects, and it also will allow to reduce the working expenses, and through the collateral effects they will help to develop the regions of the Russian Federation. Considering the new economic conditions which we are facing right now, the importance of south and north corridor is more important, and by the end of the year, the transport of Bashkortostan has transported more than 60 million tons of cargo, and the Republic is ready to develop infrastructural projects and to participate in different transits of cargoes in the north-south corridor. The main source is Bela River, and Ministry of Transport is always working with the local bodies of government on the matters of deepening the river. In the result of this work, the Federal Agency of the Sea and River Transports of the Russian Federation has decided to increase the guaranteed depth up to 2 meters in Bela River, which is 10 centimeters, is more than the state order of 2021. As of now, the administration of Kama water reservoir, as suggested by the Ministry of Transportation of Republic of Bashkortostan, is continuing on supporting the guaranteed depth on the river of Bela, which is going to allow to provide for the transportability of cruise ships from other ships or from other regions of the Russian Federation, which is going to allow the full-fledged work of the water transport in the Republic. On transporting cargo with river transport, navigation of 2022. Our transport has transported more than 60 million tons of cargo and 60,000 passengers, and we have started working with another quarry on the River Bela, which is a place for recreation for citizens of Ufa, and it allows to continue the transportation of passengers. In the navigation of 2022, 12 steamships have started working, and from region of Russian Federation. In the year 2021, only 5 of those exist. The infrastructure of the water transport includes, as of now, almost 1,000 internal river routes, 3 quarries, Ufa, Birsk, and Agder, which is not acting right now. The cargo quarry located in Agder is created to provide for the Bashkir atomic plant, which reduces the expenditures for mass and big cargoes and provides for the infrastructure on the strategic Ural meridian and increases the potential of the regions of Russia, improves the transportation in the Russian Federation and other regions, and the cargo is the depth of the river in the quarry is and the berth is more than 4 meters, which allows for 4,000-ton ships, etc. So, and it is located in the internal channels of the River Bela, where the problems with the bottom of the river might occur. As of now, the activity of the cargo terminal has to be restored. For that, the Ministry of Transport is going to have the bidding to choose the contractor to perform works on developing the technical specification of the projects to restore the birth of Agedel. And at the result of technical specification, we will establish financial model, how to implement the projects, and how to work with investors. That's in short. Thank you. That's my report. I can answer your question if you have any, then, or we can give floor to the next speaker. 2 or 3 minutes if you have questions, please. Then we continue.
So now we would like to give floor to the first Vice President of the Foundation of the Center of Strategic Development, Gleb Pokatovich. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you. You know, the presentation was really very interesting because it contains very important details that we are lacking for understanding of the overall picture. But I would not like to get deep into details because we have colleagues who will tell you better about those. And I would like to talk about the prospects and the prospects of this port in context of the North-South corridor. What happened in 2022? So today at the plenary session I have already spoken about this. We happen to be in a situation when those issues that we knew of, those plans that we were aware of, due to certain circumstances we were supposed and we have to implement as fast as possible. And as they say, that crisis is not just the risk and losses, and this is the time for opportunities, the time for opportunities in trade with the Persian Gulf countries, with Central South and Western Asia. But if we look back in 2022, it has not been finished yet, but we still understand that export to those countries that impose sanctions on us will go down totally by 30%, and the export to neutral countries will grow, roughly. I'm not going to give you the exact figures, but it's going to be about 50%. Where is the difference? And at the same time, we will also see the import. So we see that the volume of import is going down. And here comes a question. Why are such a reduction in the West? We cannot compensate with the growth in the East. But this is clear because of some infrastructural limitations, and we understand that we cannot increase the capacity of both corridors just rapidly. A lot has been done, but those prospects of growth that we see for transportation that have been mentioned by Alexander, and so would be the prospects for 2030. And we see that if we look at this year, the volumes have not changed at all, in spite of all of the efforts. If we speak about East-West, then we would see the so-called contradiction. On one hand, we cannot transport our coal, but on the other hand, we cannot import the containers. It's another amazing issue. And how we'll be able to take the decision between the export of coal and import of containers? We were trying to do certain evaluations and that allow us to judge about the effect for the added value and for financial parameters. And here we see that from the point of view overall for our economy and its development in the nearest years, containers are extremely important. It's the matter of principle. And it has already been mentioned in the first presentation. And the growth for the East has already been divided by the exporters. What we can build, what we can increase. It has already been planned by the exporters. So far, the transport corridor north-south would be extremely important as far as it will allow to diversify the supplies. Formally, it exists. It exists for quite a long while, and now we see the expectations. And we have an expectation that we have the logistics, we have the real solution that would allow to transport quite a substantial amount of cargo. And this story is all about explaining why the Agedel port is very important. And the most important here is the fact that has already been mentioned is the cargo fleet. We need to understand what is going to be used for transportation. Any predictions we're making will not ensure and will not guarantee the accuracy. But from what we have and from what we see, we understand that the main directions would be as follows. As for 2022, we see that export to India and Emirates and other Asian countries is increased by 2 times. Also China, Turkey, Southeast Asia, Iran. It is due to bypass way. So these cargoes are not transported via north-south corridor. It means that as soon as we omit the limitations in south-north corridor, we will be able to provide not the extensive growth, but we will ensure the growth due to switch from other routes. In terms of coverage of these volumes, looking at Iran and Azerbaijan, we expect that we will see increasing demand for the Russian oil products, need in grain. And as for Iran, we will see the need in metallurgy, and we can list. And our colleagues from DMTK have already done this review, and there is certain demand. And if we look in the context of the Caspian 5 in October, the summit that we hosted in Moscow, we heard very serious evaluations of the potential between the mutual trade of the Caspian 5 countries, and this would be the most functional part of this corridor. And it is clear to say that the Republic of Bashkortostan, having strong position in oil chemistry and agriculture, could not be just the organizer of this transportation, but also as the supplier. And these are the products that could be demanded by other countries that are joined, connected to north-south corridor. And speaking from the general judgments and understanding of the cargo flows, the potential exists for the port and for the south-north corridor, and the technical and economical justification will give us an answer to the question how much it would cost. And speaking from practice, we were talking about deepening the bottom of the Volga River. It was about the Cheboksar power plant where they were supposed to ensure the depth, the vessel depth, for the entire length from Cheboksar and upstream. And as a result, we've obtained that it was quite expensive on one hand, and the completion of construction was evaluated by the designers at about 120 billion rubles. At that, it was the end of the Soviet Union, and by the time of the power plant was almost completed, we visited all those facilities, all those hydrotechnical construction and concrete. A lot of concrete was used there, and probably we cannot think that recovery of that infrastructure that used to exist, and it would be cheaper than the erection of everything from the 0 point. It's quite difficult. We need to be very accurate in doing these calculations. And if the colleagues could tell us about what is going on, it's really very interesting. Another thing, the port is a good thing, but the combination with other transportation networks is also very important, because at the moment, Agidel is connected with the transportation network with a very narrow lane. And once we're talking about the prospects for the seaport with quite a substantial traffic and vessels, we need the railway. And as an option, this would be the reconstruction of the old Soviet rail track or construction of a new one. There will always be an option whether we reconstruct the old ones or we build a new one, because it will maybe cheaper to build a new one. But it's very important in this sense. It seems to me that in any evaluation and any discussions of this project, it's important to consider at the starting point that as a project, it may successfully start only if it is considered as a comprehensive project, together with the railroad, with the outer road with the highway, and in general. So if we resume, the idea looks very promising, though speaking from practice of our communication with the Ministry of Economic Development, I may draw your attention to the fact that the requirements are really very high towards financing models. And as far as I know, the Ministry is working on the order about general requirements to financial models that will be provided for consideration. It's hard to imagine that such project could be implemented without any serious investment from the federal budget or from the Republican budget, but taking into consideration all of the funding sources, this financial model should take into consideration and demonstrate that this project is viable. And in spite of this, I will tell you that this is really a promising project, and I would like to listen to my colleagues about some specific things that are happening there.
You're welcome to ask a question. I have heard those words about financial models. We, being the Institute of Financial Sector, we see those low-quality models all over Russia. But the question is, so we're not talking about the development of transport system and corridor, but the creation of multimodal hub. So what does the Center of Strategic Development think about zoning and structurizing of the supplies? What products or non-products should move towards the direct loading, and what are the prospects here? Because we're talking about the loads. What are we going to load? How exactly is it going to work? This is the first question. And what structurization for large and SMEs customers is it going to be? Or are we working only with the big ones? So, and the distribution is only that. So have you been working on this matter? You know, it's quite sensible to ask this question. I would ask it myself. So if our colleague is still online, so I hope that he could comment on this. I'm talking about Mr. Isaev. So the forecasts are being updated all the time by the Ministry of Economic Development. I cannot comment on this in details, of course, but once again, some items have been already mentioned. But basically, I cannot answer the way you want me to answer. Maybe we could try it together with Mr. Isaev. Okay. Colleagues, I'm still with you. I can answer, actually. Yes, I'm sorry for readdressing, but I think that you will manage to answer much better than I can. Yes, of course, no problem, not a problem. It's a good question, it's a fair question, but from the point of view of forming the loading base, it also has to be addressed to Republic in particular, because what we do the forecast load base. We do it with the Ministry of Economic Development, and it's decomposed to product groups and a million of tons per annum, and not on monthly basis. We have this information, every corridor is assessed like that, and then it's validated on the level Mr. Belousov and Ministry of Transport and Ministry of Economic Development. Everything is like that, including the load base, which will be based on corridor north-south. Thank you. Let us continue then. We have deputy head engineer of Kuibyshev Railroad, Mr. Melnikov. The main problem which you see What prevents you from creating normal infrastructure for the cargoes of Agidel port? The main problem is the absence of railroads. Even to Neftekamsk, it goes through Perm. Is it so expensive, and what criterion exists in order for Russian railroads to start working on creating workarounds, etc.? Russian railways are always ready for anything. It's all about financing. Developing the project costs about 1 billion for construction of 1 kilometer without any artificial buildings and structures. In order to develop the technical specification, we need to understand what profile we're talking about and what length and what conditions will be for the railroad. So it's very hard to answer like that from the top of my head, but we need to work on this. And another thing, so we have Kuibyshev Railroad are not directly linked to it, so we are just on the side of the topic. And however, Russian Railways is always ready. Infrastructural projects are always being supervised by us, especially in the special economic areas. We have projects in Taliati, which is quite the same. And we had this infrastructural projects of this kind as well. So that's my answer. Yeah, the problem is that the northern part is Gorkova Railway, but the problem with Agidel port is going to be occurred due to the fact that we don't have the link to Ufa through railway. And Agidel is saying, yes, of course, that's not going to be a problem. We have the existing one, but once again, we have this railway, but it's in a bad state. I don't know if it's working or not. So, and it goes to Perm. And the cargo flow, which could be developed to Agidel or vice versa, does not exist, unfortunately. That is why, so from this side, it's Kuibyshev Railroad. Maybe they have some suggestions, you know, how exactly to do it. I'm not ready to answer right now, so let's just take a look at some options. Yeah, the absence of the road and the cost of 1 kilometer of the road. I don't know. We need to find some ways to solve this problem. Well, considering that all the chemistry is on Kuibyshev Railroad, and it links Kuibyshev and Gorkovsky Railway, I think it's logical, since we're talking about the route which will be built through Kazan, and once again we will need to rearrange the passenger flow through Agidel, and that's possible. We should investigate into it. Yes, let's take a look at it. I recommend we support our contacts and keep in contact, and in the nearest future we will work with specifications and everything. So, and of course, think about the cargo, etc. So, and here we're thinking about multimodal hub in particular, and we are also thinking about the trucks, the vehicles, the road vehicles, and everything. So, but we'll keep you informed anyhow. Thank you very much for participating in this round table.
And now we continue, and the floor is given. So many speakers we have. Rustam Gizatulin, Deputy Minister for Land and Property Resources, and in the first one we're interested in the legal justification, legal evaluation of those land plots and that property that is located in the territory of the port, and how the Republic could distribute and allocate these resources. Good afternoon, dear participants. By the decree of the government of the Republic of Bashkortostan, for the concern of The property was transferred to Bashkortostan. The property, the land plot, and all the movable and non-movable property was given. And our ministry and our corresponding dedicated institution was established, Bashkir Electricity Networks, and with the capital of 75% as the contribution, the Republic allocated the non-movable property, land plots, and movable property located in the industrial area of Agidel city. At the moment, in the register, we have 154 facilities and movable property in Agidel, and not recorded and not accounted for the government institutions, and the facilities in Agidel port allocated at the large area with different types of ownership, and the Bashkortostan owns 17 land plots for 291 hectares and 22.5 hectares. One is 49.6, belongs to the municipal district Agidel. Also, it comprises 20 land plots for the total area of 62 hectares that were provided in the right of rented land for individuals, and for 46 hectares. Based on the decree of the head of the Republic in 2021, by means of the decree related to government property, it was agreed that 20 non-operatable land plots will be deducted off the list. We have elaborated the following draft, and this gives us the right, in case of any recognition of this land plot as a prospective one, we have the right to get rid of all of the items located at those land plots. And based on the decree, we have given the right, as I have already mentioned, to free the land plot for more effective use in future. This year, the Ministry of Property, if you don't know, have a special dedicated Treasury Department that is authorized to treat the land plots and the government property and to operate. So they have buildings for 222. They sold it out, the building for 229 square meters, and the money arrives into the Republican budget. And also Treasury signed the 6 rent agreement for the total area of 740, 832, 577 square meters of non-living areas and warehouses. And due to the fact that the term of rent has already expired, the total area of 951 square meters and for 1,032 square meters, we have signed the corresponding agreements on termination of the agreements with the tenants, and planning to provide these facilities for rent via auction. And as far as we have 27 facilities that belong to the Treasury that are free venues at the territory of the Republic, provided for rent to the entities from small and medium-sized companies. The list is given at the webpage of the ministry and the portal business of Bashkortostan Republic, and also at the webpage of administration of Agidel. And the procedure for transfer of the property for rent is known, and we need to follow the requirements, competitive procedures, that the Republic being represented by the ministry, have created the conditions and all the prerequisites for preferential transfer for rent. But as far as I understand, if there were those who wanted to get those land plots or facilities or quite serious investors, we could have reduced the term of consideration of such applications. And if they come to pay it off, this would be a separate procedure. We need to have the forecast plan of privatization, and also then we need to arrange an auction, and only then we're supposed to do anything. But if we have someone with serious intentions, they may approach in compliance with the federal law, they may initiate the rent agreement, and then they will be able to pay it off. And there will be no other competitive procedures, no tenders, but if the investor comes with some limited abilities, then buying 1 or 2 or 3 facilities, then in general they make it doubtful as far as here we would see. We would prefer to have an anchor tenant in this respect for these facilities and premises. And once we identify the rent pay, so with the rent fee, here we see certain issues in terms of the fee for rent, because usually it's 40%, 60% from the basic cost. And for this, one could provide preferential rent fee and rent rate. And due to, for example, by capital refurbishment, they may not pay these rent rate if they do capital refurbishment. Such mechanisms are in place at the moment, but if one wants, then, and if once this is a Republican decree, we may do all the changes and try to correlate it with the rent fee. And for this, we need someone to talk about, and we need the one who would pretend to come and rent the premises. I am not going to give preferences to certain investors. We would like to see a large investor who would come and approach us. And here comes a question. Probably here we would need to add that Agidel is located at the border with Tatarstan, and now we're talking about Bashkortostan. But the channel that we see is about 1.5 kilometers, and it stays with Tatarstan. This also needs to be taken into consideration, because if we're talking about a multimodal hub, we need to see the interest of Tatarstan in this respect. And the main area of interest would be land. And I also see that there is a certain interest in using these land plots, and Tatarstan would not reject the opportunity to take part in this project. And once we are talking about development of a multimodal hub, then probably it must be working not just for Bashkortostan, but also for other regions of Russia. And so there were times when everyone remembers Agidel, the city of 5 seas, and here port could be rephrased to a certain extent. And thus Agidel will become a port of 5 regions, adjacent regions, and they are interested in development and enhancement of such a direction. Thank you.
Now we give floor to Deputy Minister of Agricultural, Mr. Plisov. Good day, dear colleagues. I will be speaking about the requirements of the agricultural producers in interregional and international production and transportation. The agriculture is developing very rapidly thanks to the federal programs and Republican programs of support. And as of now, we are providing ourselves with a pretty good amount of raw products of the food products and processing products. And of course, we can see some extra products which we have to sell as well. First of all, we're talking about the internal Russian market. And this is the task we are successful at. We are providing our products from Kaliningrad to Far East. First of all, we're talking about the railroad transportation and truck transportation. And in the recent 5 years, we have been developing exports, in particular, thanks to the national projects, the international cooperation export together with our colleagues. You can see our head, Ildus, the head of the Russian Export Center here in the Republic. Due to their help, we managed to increase the exports by tenfold. In the year 2017-18, the export was about $30 million, so this was pretty low. And right now, we are getting up to $400 million, and the sky is not a limit. So we have 45 countries to deliver goods to. The geography in the recent year has been changing, but once again, we need to highlight that the numbers remain on the level of year 2021. We are just shifting from European to Asian countries. And of course, Chinese People's Republic of People. Usually we're sending our goods via railroad, and then logistics is built so that we use the sea vessels next. That is why new water routes are going to stimulate us to provide and produce the product, to increase the production, and to have even more goods delivered for export. But once again, we might work in Russia as well, because our water channel was developed very much. There were elevators built there, Elishev elevator, Turtuli elevator, Ufa elevator, up to Birsk. And actually those were large vessels which would go to sea next. As of now, thanks to the Ministry of Transport colleagues, we deepened the river, which allowed us to use sea vessels to reach Elishev elevator. So this channel started working for exports in particular. But unfortunately, these vessels cannot go further than Astrakhan, because their class is different. It's river, sea. Then they have to reload, which is reflected on the price of our products. Which means that any new transport connection for our agricultural companies and enterprises is going to be demanded. Container transportation are demanded as well. So far we're using the containers only via railway, but we need to remember about the sea transportation. In numbers, exports 4,100 tons, 400,000 tons of cargoes has been sent last year, and next year the same, and across Russia the same numbers. These are our digits. Thank you for your attention.
Colleagues, do you have any questions? We continue. The next speaker we have is the Executive Director of the Directorate on Transport and Infrastructure of the Eurasian Development Bank, Sergei Paseka. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you at the round table for the Eurasian Development Bank. We are the international financial organization at in Eurasia, and due to certain circumstances, there are just a few international financing organizations in Russia. We stay here and we continue our work, and the topic of this round table is of interest for us. As far as transportation corridor north-south is a trendy one, and so it was pronounced at many presentations, and we all understand it has to be developed. There are some narrow points and some limitations, but nevertheless, we see the need to enhance it. And being an international financial organization that includes Russia, Kazakhstan, other countries of EAU, we are very much interested in further development of this corridor. And it's quite, we understand that it's quite an interesting project as far as it captures the Caspian Sea. And also every region has its own north-south direction. And in Bashkortostan, you also have north-south direction, and this topic has already been pronounced. And I'm not going to get deep into details. I'm not going to speak about occupational things. I'm not going to deal with occupational terminology, transport, logistics, but I will tell you about our capabilities as far as such projects require concentration of efforts of all of the stakeholders. And as a rule, as for the federal level and for at the regional level, we need to see the corresponding investors that would ensure the flows of cargo and those local banks that you have. And such the development institute as we are could also be helpful here and ensure the correct structurization of such a complex project. We have a lot of expertise in such complex projects, like construction of the highways, and so it would be the ring roads, the highways, the Taliati bypass road, and we were involved in construction of this bridge, the bypass road, and also there is a need in comprehensive tools. We will be capable, unlike our colleagues and partners from the Russian banks like Sberbank, Gazprom Bank, VTB, you all know these banks, but we have our own specific features and capabilities. In terms of provision of funding, dedicated funding, and we are ready to support the investors, and we are ready to secure some preferential instruments and tools. And if one starts speaking about the structurization of the project, at that stage our institute will... So we as a bank will be able to offer interesting solutions for the north-south transport corridor, because it needs to be further elaborated. And once we see such a comprehensive project in the Republic, it is of interest for us and we are ready to join. Thank you. Our main speakers have already made their presentations, and now we have time for Q&A session. And we have some time left just for making some clarifications. I would just like you to understand that speaking of sea transport of the last century, the Bela River was used for floating up to 30 million of different cargoes. And this data is available in different sources of information. And speaking from practice of our old experts, the Bela River was used by different vessels, and a lot of cargoes were transported via this river. But now we see that this fleet is used less and less, and it's now somewhere at the end of the transportation chain, but it has certain prospects. And to be able to develop such type of transport, we need to have the river, we need to have the certain depth, and we need the boats. And probably Ildar will tell us something about this. Well, nowadays, we cannot say that we can transport about 30 million. But as for the plan this year, we have increased the scope of transportation of our cargoes. So last year it was 203,000 tons, and this year we transported during the navigation up to 700 tons.
And we've increased the passenger flow. Last year it was 3,500, and right now it's 35,000. Our enterprises are working on the matters of development for year 2023. There are perspectives, there are prospects, there are contracts which were already signed. There are those which we are reviewing for year 2023. But considering what we have now, year 2023 should be even better. Thank you. Yes, dear Oleg, thank you very much for the chance to speak here. Let me distract you a little bit. The way I see it, the international transport corridors, north-south, includes vehicle transport and railway transport. And we don't see the river segment of it. Why does it happen? Because the river transport in our conditions is seasonal. We have this notion, the summer navigation, and winter, let's call them holidays. I suggest to study this matter. I'm not the first one to say this. However, we need to study the matter of the winter navigation. What is it actually on the river? So this is the icebreakers and the and of course the floodgates. So it's from Perm to Taganrog and Astrakhan. Speaking about the locks, working with the organizations which are working with them. So our discussion showed that we need just a political will, the team, and they would stop for January to maintain the locks. So once again, the advantages are quite clear, so there is no difference between seasonal transports, the increase of cargo base as is, and shift of a part of cargo which could be excessive for Far East to Caucasus. They would shift those cargoes to river. They would get additional preferences. And in the end, I have a suggestion. Maybe, under the auspices of Ministry of Transportation, we need to create the working group to study the matter in more details. I'm not an expert, I might be mistaken. This is just my personal opinion. But I suggest we create a working group to study this matter, to get the expertise, to have some conclusions, to write some letters to the relevant bodies, to create some documents, and to move ahead with kind of a plan or whatever. Or maybe the Center of Strategic Developments, the Directorate of Transport Corridors or whatever. I don't know who might be joining us in this work. Well, that's it. That's my suggestion. That's an interesting suggestion indeed. We have an expert here. Executive Director of Kambarka Port, Mr. Murzaev. Could you comment on this? Good day. Icebreakers. That's quite possible. But as of now, since we're working in Kambarka, not far from Agidel, 38 kilometers from Agidel, it's not loaded whatsoever. Why? Because the cargo base which could be sent is not formed territorially. Moreover, when we formed this base, it turned out to be that we don't have the fleet which would be able to deliver goods to the ports of destination. Because port is not just a location, it's not a point on the map. Because things have to go there or they have to be formed there. And in order for that, there has to be fleet. And there has to be the second port, which is going to accept this cargo. The port cannot be viewed as something separate, because this is some point through which the cargo goes. Seasonality, wonderful thing indeed. But I would agree that this is an interesting idea, yes, and if we have new vessels and they're going to be loaded for the whole year, of course they will return investments very fast. that's a great idea, but let's try to do at least something now. Because as of now, we're talking about railway Agidel-Ufa. The road vehicles are competing with railway a lot, and the question is, do we need railway at all in this case? 400 kilometers before would be preferable for railway, but now things have changed. 600 kilometers are covered by motor vehicles due to the absence of reloading of those vehicles, and that's more beneficial. I would think about multimodal hub first. Yes, it's a good idea. And actually, we had the same project for Kambarka port. But I think you have an advantage here. Since you have things to export, you can create a cargo base. And you can create everything around it to send the goods to any different areas and destinations. We're looking at Caspian. Exports is an interesting thing, yes, of course, but once again, we need to deliver goods to all the destinations, and we have the upper parts of Volga. Something might go there, metal, minerals, whatever. Because the vessel has to be loaded all the time. The dead freights, when it goes to one side, it's not going to be competitive compared to anything. So the load has to go to, the cargo has to go both sides. So once again, whether we're talking about roads, railways, rivers, of course, you have the Bashkir River vessels, the oil tankers. As of now, you have them. And the port has to be included in this whole ecosystem, but step by step, I suggest we begin with smaller things. Thank you for your comments.
So, do you have any other opinion, dear colleagues? I think here it should be mentioned that we had entrance from Turkey, and we discussed with them a lot of issues, and we already started the contact with them. They approached us. They were interested to build the facilities, and so they were interested to invest. But then there was a story with an aircraft that they hit, and this issue was suspended. So maybe we should get back to this story, and we should contact the Ministry of External Economic Relations. And as far as I know, that the work with the investors with the other countries is in progress. And as far as I know, the discussions are in place not only with Turkey, but also with Iran. Maybe you are aware of this, and with India. Yes, probably it would be interesting if we have a point where we would have the Indian or Iranian or Turkish ports, and also the point in Bashkortostan. Then we will see the understanding of logistics, of the routes, and also we will see the understanding of the dispatching of cargo. For the moment, it's just at the very beginning. And our task, as of those people who are very cautious, very concerned about the further development of the Republic, and we would like our actions and our intentions to bring to the fact that the port would appear as a multimodal hub, and our goods that our Republic produces would be known to the whole world. Is there anything else to add? I would like to give the floor to Oleg, because he is experienced in dispatching the cargoes from our port of the oil products. He will share his experience. You know, it's quite an old story. Our terminal for oil products was brought into operation 1994. We had a few dispatch shipments from our port, and the last one was in 2009. And we stopped because of the fact that the rail track did not allow us to continue the work because it's 650 kilometers from Ufa to Agidel by rail track, but there was no straight rail track, and that is why we stopped. And from that moment, we stopped our operation, and we do not deal with any freight, but we have certain plans in mind for upgrade and for reconstruction, and we would like to get back to work. And I would like to hear from you what types of vessels have you provided your service for and how it was going out. So through which gates? And so it was internal inbound ones with the Russian vessels up to 5,000 tons, the tankers, and also we used to load the oil products for transportation within Russia. We had the special place for the rotation of the vessels, and as far as the width of this canal was not sufficiently enough, but we have made certain changes. It was possible to rotate the vessel, so it was quite interesting thing. And our project nowadays is not in operation because of the fact that we depend strongly on our customers, and the customers, we can count them on the one-hand fingers, and it would be Lukoil, Bashnev, those who produce the oil products. But at the moment, we are not in dialogue with them. But we do hope that something will change, and we are still hopeful for this dialogue, and we are ready to develop, and we are writing different letters, and we are waiting for the answers. And this is it. Thank you.
I'd like to give floor to Mr. Garipov. Yeah, let me conclude, because according to the timing, we're ready to finish. Yes, well, Bashkortostan has a great wish to restore the activity of Agidel cargo port. We have been discussing this for a long while already, and in the recent months, we tried to accelerate those discussions. Starting from January, we will have a specification, and after that, we could discuss things in more details. As it was said, we have property and everything. We have been working with the Iran, and we have been having our negotiations with them. There are different options of the development, etc., so there are questions we need to think on. And one of those is the guaranteed depths. But from Ufa to Gruzivka, we need to maintain the guaranteed depths. And then from Gruzivka to Kama, there will be 4 meters, which will allow 4 different vessels to enter. And speaking of our fleet, transportation of cargo, yes, indeed, it's problematic. And once again, the sanctions for the oil products, as of now, we didn't see those. And compared to the last year, it was 2.5 million tons, and now it's not that active. It stood still, and we do not know when exactly it's going to be restored because of the sanctions. And that's a problem, because we are the oil republic. Agriculture is developing, but this is not good enough for us to work with the workload as it should be, as we should, with the cargo efficiency. So the port is in the northern parts of the republic, and most of things are in the southern parts. So now you are talking about the transport, but once again, if we work with it, so we'll just break everything in the Agidel, all the roads. So and. So loading the ports with only motor vehicles is going to be impossible. We'll need to have water transport and railway transport, and this is always a problem. We have been discussing things with Kuybyshev railroads, and well, you've heard that This is a complicated economic period, so it's going to be very hard to build those things right now. But at least we have some understanding, some work has already been initiated, and I think that altogether we will manage to do something. Well, roads are of category 3 and 4, so don't worry, they are okay. I think we need to speak about the strategy first of all. As far as I understand, we have cargo, we have capacities. We have people who are ready to support us with their money. We have stakeholders. Let's just shake hands and move along this route. Well, this was rather emotional. I think it's the great cue to finish the roundtable. I think that further on we could discuss those things backstage. Let's work on this. Thank you to everybody and good luck.